Well, Bob, welcome to the podcast. This has been a minute coming.
Yeah, I am excited to be here, Chris. Thank you for having me. Excited to chat.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I mean, not only are you a good friend in real life, but I just want to share your story here today, yours and Linda's story. Money, Bob, as we were talking about before I hit record here, money's not something I talk about on the show on the regular. The podcast is all about mental and emotional health and spiritual growth. But for a lot of people, underneath financial stress is fear and anxiety that just began in a different place. And that was your story in part. So here's where I want to start. Take us back. March 2002, you're just about to turn 21 and the stuff hit the fan. Bob, what happened?
Yeah, so this was my turning point in life. And so basically at that point, I was on a sabbatical. The Lord had kind of called me on the sabbatical out of my old life into a new life, kind of breaking away from my old patterns of whatever. We don't need to go all there. But the point is, I'm on the sabbatical.
You can if you want.
Yeah, so we'll go a little bit there.
I'd love to.
So I had come out of, I had given my life to the Lord as a probably 13, 12-year-old at that point. And over the years that followed, I very much was a one-toe-in-the-water Christian. And the totality, it could be summed up in this. I would, on Saturday nights, as a high schooler, go out and get drunk. Sunday mornings, I'd go to church and fall asleep in church. And so that was kind of my rhythm, and that illustrates kind of my walk with God and where I was with everything, my intentionality. But anyway, as I turned 20, I don't know, something in me shifted, and I began to really pursue God. And I said, I'm done halfway. I want to go all in. And in doing that, God's like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull you away from your world that you know, all of your friends, all of your habits, all of your everything that you're doing. I'm going to set you down here. And so he sends me down to Florida for 7 months on this little sabbatical down there. Took a year off of college. At that point, I was a freshman or sophomore in college, and took a year off. And honestly, I was kind of living the dream. So I'm living in a beach town. I have a convertible, and I'm not going to school. And at that point, like this particular day that you're talking about, the day before my 21st birthday, I had just picked up my paycheck. It was Friday, and so my friends are coming down the next day to celebrate my 21st birthday. So it was just a good day, But what happened illustrated just how much of a mess I was in financially, because so as I'm driving from picking up my paycheck to the bank to cash it, to then go to pay my landlord because rent's due that day. So as I'm driving, my car just stops in the middle of the road, completely dies, so fast I can pull over. And it was right in front of this minor league ballpark, and there was about to be a game. And so there's all these cars driving by, and I'm stopped in the middle of the road, turning the key, no idea what I'm doing, and everybody's staring, doing the thing, looking. And as I'm sitting there turning the key, I finally realized this isn't going to work. And then all of a sudden, it's like the lights went on. I just started seeing everything that's going to happen over the next few hours, few days. And I saw my whole financial world kind of crashing down as I realized, how am I going to get this car towed and fixed, and then get this check cashed, and then pay my rent that's due this day? Because if I don't pay my rent today, they're going to tack on a $50 late fee. And my paycheck was just enough to cover rent, so I didn't even have enough to pay that $50 late fee. And I'm not even thinking about the next day and how I'm going to buy food, or the next week, or that's not even my concern. I'm just thinking of the immediate chaos that I'm living in at this point. And the truth is I had been someone who would have told you and anyone else I was good at managing money. I had worked in a bank. My parents, I loved playing with money so much. They thought I was going to be an accountant when I grew up, even as a 10-year-old, And so I just thought I knew everything, but I was actually a mess financially. And so anyway, so that kind of led me to this point where I'm sitting in this car, my hands are gripping this steering wheel, and I'm like, I am completely clueless. 20 minutes ago, it says great day, and now I'm like, my whole life is, financial life is crashing before my eyes. And so that was my moment where it's I cried out to God. I'm like, God, I don't know everything I think I thought I knew. And if you have a better plan, because my financial plan has not worked out at all. And so if you have a better plan, I'm interested. I want to hear it now. And so from that point, that was, that humbling, that admission that I didn't know it all. That's when God really started to intervene and move.
It sounds like there's a bit of a house of cards, established in your life. I think I'm doing okay financially. Talk to me about mental and emotional health in that space as well. So in other words, when you had that that break point moment and your car's on the side of the road, did the house of cards topple? I mean, what was revealed underneath the surface about your priorities, your sense of safety and security, where you were placing your trust in life, even your emotional health? What was going on?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think God used that messy moment as an opportunity to reveal what was going on in my heart, reveal a lot of lies that I had believed about money, reveal, just a lot of things that, because like I said, it wasn't that much, 9 months before that maybe, where I made this commitment to God. It's like, I want to go all in. And I remember like talking to a mentor of mine, as I was kind of like getting serious about God and, seeking out some mentors on this journey, he said, one of the scariest prayers you can pray is just this prayer of, God, I'm all in. Like, I'm going to do whatever. And so whatever I need to go through to learn whatever, like, let's just do it. Let's just speed this up. And it was really funny that, like, those opportunities to grow really quickly, which are not always fun, just happened really quickly. But anyway, coming back to your question a little bit, there was just a lot that was revealed with that. For me, I didn't know how to trust God as my provider. I just believed so much of what the world taught us about money, that money is the goal, that money is the thing that provides security, that it's the thing that makes you important. These are all things that the world wants to tell us and teach us about money, but that's not what Jesus said. You know what I mean? Like that, those are the things that God puts in our lives. Like, he's the one who says that we are important. He is our provider. You know what I mean? He is our security. And so anyway, so I came to grips with this fact that, I had in so many ways, like, just been serving mammon and making that the thing. And God wanted to show me how to do it the right way.
Frame this up for listeners today, because we are in economic turmoil as a country right now. In fact, at the time of our recording, you and I were just talking about, we'll probably see actual technical recession on paper by next month. And at the time of airing, we'll see what's actually happening here. So money concerns is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds and hearts right now. Inevitably, it's causing stress at home. Okay. What's the reframe then people need to have regarding the trust structures of trust when everything can be shaken? Because there's a meta narrative I want to paint for people today, Bob. Money is just an example, but for some reason, money seems to be the greatest example we keep coming back to in a lot of these conversations.
So the thing that I hang on to in these moments of uncertainty, because, so a recession, is the macro level that kind of affects all of us, but not as intensely as maybe the micro level where it's like, I just lost my job last week. Now what the heck do I do? So at the end of the day, in all of the situations, whether they're super macro and big, like whatever, COVID, affecting the entire world, or a recession affecting our country or parts of the world, or, something really micro where it's like, this just happened to me, and it, financial catastrophe or whatever, in all of these situations. And it's like, and most people listening probably know this, but it's like, I'm going to keep banging this drum. Like, God is still a provider. He's not surprised by it. He's not shaken. Like, there is no reason for us to be afraid, because he is not afraid. And I think back to, as you're saying this, so I mentioned COVID, and I mentioned, the lockdowns and everything. So in 2020, so our church, I go to church in Nashville, half of our church, like, they're industry musicians. Like, there are people who make a living from touring. And so 2020, whatever, March, April, whenever everything gets canceled, like, I know so many people who overnight, their entire income for the year just got slashed.
That's it.
And I'll tell you, it was just so cool, Chris, watching in our church, because our church does a really good job of highlighting testimonies. It was so cool hearing testimony after testimony after testimony of how God provided in that year for a church made up of a very large number of touring musicians. And it was just a faith builder for me, just hearing over and over and over again all the unique ways that God was coming through, one person after another another. And so none of us want to hear that there's a recession. Like, none of us want to start hearing that stuff. But But what I want to do is just continue banging the drum of the truth of what the word says and hold that up into comparison to what the news is going to tell us nonstop, what social media is going to be posting nonstop. It's like we have to fix our eyes a little bit more on what the Bible says about the truth, that he's our provider through it all, more than just listening to the noise.
I 100% not only believe what you're saying and endeavor to walk in it. I want to play the cynic card just for a minute.
Let's
though.
do
Bob,
it.
People are saying, that sounds awesome, but my bills aren't getting paid. Or it feels like I got a pay cut right now because I used to pay $2.48 for gas and I'm paying $5.29. Where's the money? Where's it going to come from? And we can dive into some of the principles from your new book, Bob, but let's just talk from a principle perspective. What do you say to people who are like, hey, that sounds great, but nothing's changing day to day? What do I do? What do I think? And this goes back to where we started, Bob. The fear and the anxiety that is underpinning a lot of this conversation has to be dealt with first. There is a fundamental issue of trust that we have to resolve. What do you say?
Yeah. No, So one of the things that we found, like when we look back at our lives and watch the miracles where God has provided for us, I had people steal from me significant amounts when feeding my family, depended on that money and getting it back. I've been laid off, and when my wife had a entry-level job and we were really struggling, we've watched our business income, drop 80% from certain things. We've had overnight things with Google algorithm that affected our site traffic where we'd lose 50% of our income overnight. We've been through some ups and downs, and we've seen God's faithfulness through it all. So one of the things that I've identified with this that I think is so important, especially for Christians, is that we have the opportunity. Let me just break it down this way. So, I've been in church a long time. I've talked to a lot of Christians over the years, specifically about money. And I see a lot of people in church, in the church world, who will do one of three different things. So the first thing is do nothing. So financial crisis comes, whether it's macro or micro, whatever. Financial problems come and they do nothing. Put their fingers in the ear, go, la, 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 la. I'm going to pretend like it isn't happening. It doesn't exist. Just pretending like nothing's going on. There's another group where I see it's like in these situations, they are going to take the all of the natural wisdom that they can muster up to kind of do their best, and so and a lot of this is biblical wisdom out of the book of Proverbs or, Ecclesiastes or something, wisdom about money. And so they're trying to pay off debt, or they're trying to not spend more than they earn, or whatever. They're thinking ahead, they're planning ahead, like all these different things, following sound, wise principles. So that's another group. And then there's another group who doesn't want to do any of those wise principles, doesn't want to plan ahead at all, but just wants to pray when the crisis comes, like, Jesus, help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus, help me. And they might see miracles, and there are miracles there. And, and I've been in all three of these camps at different points in my life, but the power is when you combine the wisdom that's in the Bible with tapping into the spiritual power, tapping into what God can do, and combining those two things. And when you go back and look throughout the Bible, you see this over and over and over again. And so one of the stories that we share a lot, and talking about this in context, is Jehoshaphat. And you look at this situation that he has, 2 Chronicles 20, for anybody's curious. He's got three armies coming up against him. He's got an impossible battle that's coming to him. And the first thing that he does is he calls a fast and a prayer, So he could have built out a battle plan, but the first thing he does is he goes to God. But then God gives him instruction, says, hey, I want you to march down to the battle line, leading with the praisers. Okay, so get your tambourines out. Those guys will be on the front lines. But you have to march down to that battle line. You have to do something. You have to take some natural steps. And that combination of doing those two things allowed him to see such a tremendous breakthrough where all three of those armies are completely dead. But not only that they got the spoils of all that. It took them 3 days to carry it back to their camp. So there's something about doing these two pieces together, like tapping into God, believing for miracles when you need a miracle, but also doing the stuff that you need to do, the natural stuff that you need to do. And that combination, I'm telling you, is where we and so many of our readers and listeners, we have seen this over and over and over again, where God just steps in and you see a miracle, you see the wind at your back, something that's so much bigger than you could have ever done in your own strength.
I love that wisdom because It's exactly what you said. You've got a camp of people who are going to sit and do nothing and wait and believe, and that's all good, but we have to act. We have to steward our resources and steward our lives and steward our emotional health well. There's a term you talk about in the book, assets under management, which I so love. And I even consider our mental and emotional health an asset under management. In other words, are we living on the 24-hour news cycle and getting freaked out about what we see and checking the stocks app on the iPhone and, oh my gosh, the Dow's
Terrible
down 500 today and it's up 600 today and my retirement, like we've got to play the long game. I want to rewind a little bit, Bob. Back to 2002. Were you and Linda together at that break point?
No, we weren't. So that was before Linda. And then and the ironic thing is it was a couple months after that when I actually met her. And so that was when we met for the first time. But yeah, we ended up getting married in 2005. But yeah.
Okay. So what was the self-talk then like during that time? Your break points again. I think, and the reason I ask this question is because I think like a lot of people form these default narratives and these belief I am identity statements, which end up being false identities. In other words, they look at their circumstance and say, oh, I am, and they're not saying this out loud, but it's in their heart, and it fortifies belief. I am a failure. I am this. I am that. What was your self-talk like during that time? Because this will help us realize where to start recovery and then to move forward in the practical.
Yeah, no, for me, like before that moment, it was, I am really good with money. And so I don't really need to look at it much because I'm just good at it. And so I don't even need to try. I don't need to learn any more about it because I'm just good at it. And there was a pride aspect for me in that where God needed to, show me that you're not as good as you think. And on top of that, what I can do through your financial life is so much bigger than what you can. Even if you were good at money, but you're not, what I can do is so much bigger. And so that was where I was before. And then after, those first couple of years, I very much think it was a posture of, a humility. Like that, so much of it is about that, about this humbling ourselves to be open to whatever God wants to share with us and what he wants to lead us to. And I got to that point of being humbled and being willing to learn. And through that, God was able to, I think, just lead me to some lessons that I needed,
Why is money the dominant barometer of stability, significance, et cetera, in other areas of life, be it mental and emotional health, relational health? I mean, Jesus even said it this way in Luke, unless you're faithful in unrighteous mammon, how can he be trusted with true riches? What is it about money, Bob?
Yeah. I think, because we have this thing positioned, this juxtaposition of you can serve money or you can serve God, mammon or God. And I think so many of us don't realize that like I never consciously chose to serve mammon, but I think if I'm honest and I take a look, throughout my lives, and I think most of us, if we look at our lives, I think there's points where we lean in that direction a little bit, and God wants all of our heart. Like He doesn't want any of it. Our trust shouldn't be in those things because, again, like I mentioned before, like all of those things that we're trying to put on money, like we're supposed to put on God. You know what I mean? Like He is the one who's supposed to be our provider. He is the one who is our source and our stability. And He's the one who makes us important. It's because of what Jesus did for us. It's not because of a number in a bank account or anything like that. And so I think because the world, and honestly, a lot of the church, like we've allowed that thinking to creep in to our actions and our beliefs, because the world drives this idea of money. Like that's what they have to do. You know what I mean? Like, because they don't have the Lord as their provider, as their source and their security. And so they have to turn to money for that thing. But like we shouldn't as believers. And so I think that's why you have these two things, in the barometer that you're mentioning. Like, yeah.
Okay, so then you and Linda end up getting married in 2005. It's not like you're out of the weeds financially yet. How did money tensions play out in your marriage? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I was on my journey at that point, starting to do fewer dumb things with money, still doing plenty, but a little bit fewer than before. And so I had a bunch of credit card debt, car loans, student loans, all the stuff that I was working on getting paid off at that point. She, when we were engaged, she was in her own financial mess. And so we just kind of brought our messes together and went to the Lord and said, all right, our two messes have become one. Here's our big mess. And so from that point, like so many people listening, you look at your spouse, you look at their beliefs about money, how they were raised, you look at yours, they're very rarely the same. You know what I mean? Even if you're from the same socioeconomic class, like your beliefs about money, almost every family is different. And so you come together in marriage and it's like, of course you're going to bump heads, and you're going to have differing views and opinions. So we did, just like so many other couples. And I think for me, just getting real specific on me, one of my big things is I'm a numbers guy, I'm a math guy. So I would put together the budget and, all right, this is right. This is the math, this is it. It's A plus B equals C. It's real simple. And then she's more of the 7 on the Enneagram, run out and spend all of our money type of woman. She would say that herself. So anyway, I just thought, you're wrong. You're not spending according to my budget. Therefore, you're wrong because this is just math. And so we'd bump heads over that stuff. But God finally revealed to me, it's like, I put you two in this marriage relationship together for a reason, Like there's a purpose here. And she has value to add, not only just to the marriage, but also to the financial component and how you spend money. So even though you think that you're just the one right, you're not the only one who's right here. And anyway, so it was another opportunity for me to humble myself. I'm like, okay, all right, well, what do I need to know? And I'm so thankful that he revealed that to me because I didn't even realize that I was kind of being strong-armed with it, that I kind of had this mindset, this attitude, this self-talk of I'm right, she's wrong. But when I went to her and I went to her with humility and basically said like, all right, you have value to add here. Like, let's figure out what that looks like. And now, years later, the fruit of that, I'm so excited about because we've both like mutually submitted to each other in this thing where it's like I've yielded to her, she's yielded to me. So we found this sweet balance spot. And beyond that, like God knew that I needed her and her spending behavior, or at least some of it, in my life for me to have a better life. And as a result, like I enjoy my life more because yes, there are certain things where maybe she tends towards spending more in a particular area than I might naturally do, but at the same time, I'm living life a little bit more rather than just squirreling up for retirement or whatever. And so God's really smart, and He put us together for a reason. And I suspect a lot of people listening have a similar situation as well. And so it's really important to just tap into the value of your spouse.
I like these conversations because, again, right now, folks, inflation is affecting everybody. Unless you're making, I think the stat I heard, Bob, is 300 grand or more. This thing's affecting you. And so, like I said, guys, we don't talk about this a ton on the show, but I wanted to have Bob in this conversation, in this venue, to be able to discuss these things because really this is the issue behind the issue, Bob.
Yeah.
And when we deal with the false identities of fear, shame, guilt, the insecurities, when we realize and deconstruct the house of cards that so many of us have lifted up for our lives, then I think we can get back to rebuilding on a sure and steady foundation. Bob, while things were changing in the course of your finances and, after you and Linda got married, who were you becoming from the inside out? This is one of my favorite questions to ask because in other words, I tell people on the regular that transformation doesn't happen in a day, but it does happen daily.
Yeah.
Every choice we make, Bob, affects us mind, body, and spirit in some way or another. Take us down that road in your life and in Linda's life.
Yeah.
All of the choices you two were making were shaping you in your identity and in your emotional health. How so?
Yeah. So, you mentioned guilt and shame. And I think a lot of people listening know that are surrounding money, there's a lot of guilt and shame for a lot of people. And Linda really dealt with a lot of this because she didn't feel like she had, like so many parents, she didn't feel like she learned a whole lot from her parents about money. She felt like she learned that debt wasn't good. but didn't really know what to do with it or how to avoid it or anything like that. So she carried this shame and this guilt with her money. And so like, she just kind of hid it all internally and just, pretended like it wasn't happening, and which, isn't good when you're dealing with creditors. And so, anyway, so it was just one of those things. And that was kind of what she brought into the marriage. And it was so fun watching her just start to kind of get free from that. And honestly, there was a lot of that for me too. And I didn't necessarily have, mine was a little bit different because I had more of an arrogance of thinking I knew everything, whereas she felt like I know nothing. And so we were kind of coming at it from opposite extremes. And so it's been beautiful, this transformation, like you saying, over the years. Because I was on a podcast just the other day, and somebody was asking, like, what was the day where everything changed? It's like, well, it didn't really work like that because, like you said, it's a process, And we've had these incremental seasons of growth, and it's just been fun. Like this, like anytime you're growing and becoming a better version of yourself, becoming more like Jesus, like it feels good. It feels good watching that growth and noticing that.
I do want to ask a financial question. At the time of our recording, like we had said moments ago, it does look like we'll be in an economic recession on paper by next month. Talk to people, Bob, who are facing, well, all of us are facing wild inflation, but facing the highest gas prices even in their lifetimes, but they haven't received any pay increase at work, even a cost of living adjustment. So how do we get smarter with an essentially tighter budget week to week to no fault of their own? You talk about this in book.
Yeah. So I can go practical here.
I'd love it.
Do you want me to go? Okay. So a couple different things, because I've been talking about this a lot right now. Yeah. And I love talking about the practical stuff. I love getting into it, but
take as much time as you want.
All right. So one of the first things, like this is an app I discovered, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's called like Get Upside or something. And you use this app.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the first time I used it, I think we saved 40 cents a gallon on gas. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's crazy, and then there's the Gas Buddy app where it's the same way. I mean, it works differently, but it's this idea of you go find a gas, you can use a map or an app, and it'll tell you what gas stations are nearby. And they're within a 1 mile distance. There were 2 gas stations that had a 45 or 50 cent difference in gas prices. And it's like, I'm not at all the hyper frugality type. I'm not the, let's be, pound foolish to be penny wise type of thing where I'm driving 20 miles to save $3 or 3 cents on gas. But like these are big knobs to turn in these situations right now. And so those are two different things to consider. One thing that I am encouraging a lot of people right now in terms of inflation is savings accounts rates, even at the best places right now, are still less than 1%. And inflation rates are over 8% at the moment. And so if you do the math, that basically means that money is going backwards 7% each year. And so that's not great. Now, I'm all for having an emergency fund and still maintaining that and having some cash available. I think that is smart. But if you're someone who has, tons and tons of money sitting in cash or in a savings account, there are better alternatives. And 2 that I might point people to are some government bonds called I-bonds or TIPS, which are, a lot of people don't know of them, never even heard of them, but they're government-backed bonds, U.S. government-backed bonds. Yeah, U.S. government-backed bonds that keep pace with inflation. So, for example, I-bonds are currently paying, I think it's like 9% on a government-backed bond. And a lot of people don't know about this. But anyway, so it's a great way to kind of get a pretty safe return on your money that's going to keep up with inflation, on a government-backed bond.
Anything else?
Sure.
Like Roth? What do you say, for the person, let's just say hypothetically, someone listening does have a significant amount of liquid in a savings account or in a checking account.
Yeah.
What's your best advice? Assuming they don't have consumer debt.
Yeah. Paying off debt is still a good idea. But I think not having too much money just sitting in a savings account or checking account right now, because again, you have to think of it like this is getting eroded by 7% each year. It's the
Jeez.
equivalent. It's not the same thing because you're
Yeah.
still going to have, the same dollar amount, but it's being eroded. The spending power is
The
being
value,
limited.
yes.
Yeah. And so that's just an important thing to consider, that in normal economic, periods where we're not dealing with these levels of inflation, like it's not something that is top of mind. And so that's definitely something to consider and to be thinking about. Besides that, just from an investing perspective, like what I'm doing, I have a little bit of money in gold and silver. I think there's, some wisdom in that as a hedge kind of what's going on. I'm still heavily invested in the stock market, particularly like index funds and things like that. And while I do think there's still going to be contraction, just like there always is, like, if we go into a recession, the stock market might drop a good bit, like dropped 30, 35% at the beginning of COVID. And that's just going to happen. But over the long term, I'm still very optimistic in the U.S. economy. And I'm willing to ride that roller coaster, for a while. But I think it's just really important for people to understand that money sitting in a savings account earning less than 1% is losing a lot of value. So you want to be thinking about how you can do something else with that.
That's super helpful. Okay, so you were in a similar situation in the recession several years ago, 2007 into 2008. Your boss walked into the conference room and basically said to you and your coworkers with tears in his eyes, "Hey, all of you are going to be without a job here soon." So obviously you're in a different financial position now than you were then. But what did you do then that we all should do this time around, at least from a wisdom perspective?
Yep. So, and again, I haven't always done this, but that time, like you said, it was 2008. Our company merged with a bigger company, and they just bought our whole company out, and our entire department was just eliminated. Like, we just get rid of the whole department. We'll save a bunch of money. And so we all got laid off. And I, thankfully had a 6-month heads up on that. And so I had 6 months lead time into that layoff. And so that's what we did. Like we tapped into as much wisdom as we could. We paid off as many debts as we could. And our thinking was, okay, we'll pay off all these debts, all the smaller ones that we could get paid off, because that lowers our cost of living per month. And so now we can survive on less, which is really, really powerful. When you realize, okay, whatever, it used to cost me $5,000 a month to survive, and now I can survive on $3,500. Like, that's empowering, because it doesn't require as much for you to survive. You can get by in a lower salary job. And one of the things I was so excited about at that point is once we got our cost of living down, I realized I could probably go to Starbucks and get a job there, and we can survive. And that's awesome. And that's really comforting, or I found that to be really comforting anyway. And so that was a big part of it. But then within that, we were trying to save up some cash. We weren't dealing with the inflation we're dealing with now, but we were trying to save up some cash, because on top of that, what was going on is not only did I get laid off, but I felt like God said, don't look for another job. I want you to start a blog.
How'd that go over with Linda?
Yeah. So no, I kind of, when I first felt the Lord leading here, I'm like, this is just nuts. This is 2008, Chris. Like, most people didn't know what a blog was.
Well, that's exactly right. No one was creating content.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I literally knew maybe 2 bloggers in the entire world who were possibly making a full-time income. It was so crazy. But anyway, so I went to Linda and talked to her about this, and I'm just so thankful for that woman, because there have been so many times where God gives her heads up, or she just gets right on board. Like, and she was just right on board, 100% supportive. And she's like, let's go on this adventure. Let's do it. I'm like, hon, you're making like $12 an hour at the church receptionist. Like, we gotta, so anyway, but God was faithful, man. Like, he just saw us through the whole thing. It was, I had been working on that blog for about a year at the point I got laid off, and I was making a total of $100 per month from that blog. And so for a year's worth of work, I was making $100 a month. And what was so cool, Chris, is over the 9 months that followed, he just took it and it went up and up and up, and just I can't even explain how, but 9 months later we were earning more from the blog than my day job. And 6 months later it doubled. Like, it was just such a wild ride. But But anyway, but that was part of the thing. Like, I mean, coming back to this Jehoshaphat story and this idea of combining, the natural and the spiritual forces together. Like, we did everything we could do. We did our part. Like, we didn't continue with the same level of spending that we did when I knew I wasn't getting laid off. It's like, I know I'm getting laid off. We need to adjust our spending down, And so we did. Like, we made cuts, but within that, like, we were trusting God for a miracle because there was no other way. Like, no amount of reduction in spending was going to solve our problem because she had a $12 an hour
That's
job,
it.
like. And so it just wasn't going to work out. We had to have God in that equation. So we had to tap into that, and we had to be standing in faith, believing for a miracle. But as we did both of those things, like, we got to see something that is a miracle. Like, it's just no doubt.
It's really awesome. Bob, I'd love for you to teach us, because this plays into not only the inflation conversation, but the principles you've sort of been sharing here today, and a perspective I think could bode well for all of us. Teach us about the true cost to own principle and how it works.
The true cost to own. Okay. So you're talking about literally the car thing and that idea?
Yeah. Like in the book, you had presented two
You're
different
going
models
in the
of
weeds.
cars.
I'm just making sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
I love it.
Because this is real time for all of us. We have to tighten the belt. We just have to.
Yep.
So how can we make smarter choices? And then this initiates the true cost to own principle.
Yep.
I'd love to know how it works.
Okay, so let me take you back real quick. So shortly after we got married, my guitar teacher, who I went to take jazz guitar lessons from at the time, he was a retired school teacher, high school teacher. He was in his early 60s at that point, and he was a multimillionaire. And I remember like playing guitar, and I'm like, "Hey, can you teach me like how you did so well financially? Like, I'm really curious." He's like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about it." And so he sat me down. We chatted for about 3 hours, and he just explained everything. And he's basically a multimillionaire. Didn't start investing until his late 30s on a teacher salary. I mean, so just done really, really well for himself. And he said two different things. He said most Americans waste far too much money on two different things, and because of it, like, they're destroying their financial future by doing this. I'm like, well, what are they? Tell me.
Yeah,
And he
I'm
said,
leaning
number
in.
one is food. Number one is food. He said, if you look at the way that most Americans buy food and how much money they spend on food, there's just so much here. There's so much money that's being wasted. And I'm like, all right, that's really interesting. The other one he said was cars. If you look at all the money that Americans spend on cars, from buying new cars every 2 years to insurance to repairs to whatever, all the stuff. And I remember taking that to heart. And he said, if you just can fix those two areas and just reduce your expenses in those two areas, like, you're going to be able to free up so much money that you can invest and then grow. And, and it was really just kind of simple, like pretty simple. But anyway, back to your original question of this true cost to own thing. And we all know this, like, you drive a car off the lot, like, the depreciation that happens immediately, like, it's insane. And this is all especially crazy right now, given the market with used and new cars and how it's all changed. But I think the factor to consider, this true cost to own thing, it comes from Edmunds.com. Like, this is something they came up with years ago, where you can have a car, this is an example I give in the book, I think that's what you're referencing. You can have a car that, that might be $3,000 or $4,000 cheaper when you buy it new, but over the course of 5 or 7 years of driving that car, because the insurance rate are cheaper, because the gas mileage is better, because whatever, it's more reliable, like all these different things, the true cost to own that car might actually be a whole lot cheaper on the one that cost you a few $1,000s more. So this falls in the category of like, so we're like all over the map in terms of what we spend money on personally, but like, I only buy Apple products, and it's not just because I'm a super Apple fanboy. Like, I actually am really annoyed at Apple for a lot of things, but their products hold value better than anything I've ever seen. Like, there is no Apple product. Like, I guarantee, I challenge anyone listening to go on eBay and try to sell any Apple product and not sell it. Like, there's just nothing with that Apple logo on that you can't sell, and they hold their value better than all of their competitors. And so as a result, I can go buy a new MacBook or I can buy a used MacBook. It doesn't really matter. Use it for a few years, turn around and sell it. And my total cost of owning that will be far less than if I went and bought a brand new, whatever, I don't even know. Yeah, some random Windows machine. So that's, there's a lot here though, that like, if you start thinking about the implications of this and how this affects your life and your spending, there's just a lot of opportunity to save money.
I want to talk about the principle of automation, but I want to expand it in context of this podcast beyond finances. Bob, what I love is that your advice is this: never depend on willpower. I mean, that's such a constant theme that I teach. What is it about automation that bypasses the dependence upon willpower, and how do we do it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was an observation that I had a few years back that the financially successful people, like all of the people that I'm looking up to who are just really financially successful, so my guitar teacher for one, they never depended on their willpower. Like that, and that, like once I realized that, it's like they're not more disciplined than me. They're not smarter than me. Like they literally just automated the thing that was most important. They determined this is most important, and so I'm going to automate it so I don't have to think about it. I save myself time, and I don't have to depend on my ability to muster up strength and to be having a good day to remember to invest money or remember to save money at the end of the month or to remember to give to church or whatever the thing might be. And so, yeah, I am looking for ways to automate all the time. Like I literally in my garden out back, put in this drip line that's on a timer. And so every single morning at 7:30 a.m., the timer goes off and it waters all the plants. And I don't go out there, I don't do anything. I just eat the fruit. And it's like, that's how I want to live my life. Like, how can I do work one time, automate some process to ensure that it doesn't depend on me and whether I feel good or whatever else,
That's super helpful. Tell people about Seed Time, because I do want people to be able to connect with you and Linda. And guys, I just want you to know I trust Bob and Linda, and so you can trust them as well. So go check their stuff out. But tell people about Seed Time. And Bob, what makes you different? Because the financial space is crowded, but you have a niche. You found it. What makes you guys different in the value you bring compared to others? And both of us know and have friends at the Ramsey organization really well. So we know like Dave and his team are killing it in that space as well. But what makes you guys different at Seed Time?
Yeah. No, so we've been talking about money, helping people with money for a long time. I mean, one of the things that and I've had respect for Dave.
Oh my gosh.
Helped us immensely over the years. I'm so thankful for him.
That's where we met.
Yeah, that's right. And their organization is just a couple miles that way. So we're like in their backyard. But like we try to provide a perspective, and I think that's one of the things I've talked to a lot of people over the years, who want to start a blog, want to write a book, whatever, and feel like I don't have anything unique to say. Well, it's like, well, if you say what's in your heart, like you're naturally unique. It's just if you don't try to be like someone else, that's what you got to prevent. Like be who God created you to be, share what he put on your heart to share. Like he's going to take care of the rest. Like you are a unique being. So even if I tried to be Dave Ramsey, I'm not going to be Dave Ramsey. Like we're just very, very different human beings, We're different numbers on the Enneagram, and so we communicate differently. And I think we provide different value to different people, And so while there might be overlap, and I think we have a lot of similar beliefs about money, we definitely have things that we don't completely agree on. And I think that's all good, the way it should be. But my wife, Linda, really, I think is the defining thing that makes our brand and our courses that we teach, our podcast and all that stuff, like really unique because while I am the money nerd and I am the one who talks about this, whatever, more as a financial expert, if you will, she's not. But that's what's been so powerful about our brand is having these real conversations of what it looks like, because this is what it is for most people. One spouse is a little bit more interested than the other, and how do you get in unity and how do you tackle these things together? And so having us together, on the podcast and these courses, kind of teaching, together and how we handle this, it's just been something that people have loved. And so I think that's what we're leaning into.
Just hit the target for people that want to check your work out. Seedtime.com, right?
Yep, Seed Time, like a seed you plant in the ground. Seedtime.com. Yep.
I love it. I'm just curious, Bob, as we're landing the plane here today, how in the world did you guys pay your mortgage off in 3 years?
Yeah, it's another crazy God story. So let's just go over it real quick. So at this point, 2010 or 11, I think it was, Chris, we had paid off all of our credit card debts. Hallelujah. We had paid off our car loans. Hallelujah. Awesome. We had paid off our student loans. So we had everything paid off except for our mortgage. And so, I mean, I'm tickled pink at this point because we've freed up, at that point, probably thousands of dollars of payments that we were no longer paying each month. So it felt amazing just not having those debts. But I wasn't done. Like, I'm like, God, I want to pay this house off. And so, like, I had a plan in place. It was going to take us about 3.5 years to get our house paid off with these thousands of dollars that we're putting towards our mortgage each month. And I remember going, there was a field in our neighborhood, a secluded field up on a hill. And so I'd go there and pray sometimes. And I remember going there one day and I'm praying, I'm walking this field praying. I'm like, God, I want to get this house paid off. Can you help us get it paid off quicker? And I like didn't hear audible voice, but man, I know God spoke. And I felt like he said, if you really want to see me move on your finances, I want you to begin giving your age as a percentage of your income. And I remember like looking up to the sky, really like scratching my head type of thing. Like, what? Who does this? Where did this come from? Like, I'm like, this is absolutely insane. And then my next thought was like, again, numbers guy, like doing the math in my head. Like, is this even possible? Are we going to be able to buy groceries? All this stuff. And then my next thought was kind of anger, or like, I'm not really sure what, but like, God, I've been tithing for all these years. Like, and I just want to get this house paid off. I know you don't want me to be in debt and all this stuff. And the whole time, Chris, like, I just felt like I didn't feel like this was God saying, you better do this or else. Like, it felt like this gentle invitation to go on an adventure with him. And it reminded me of Peter stepping out of the boat, like Jesus inviting him. You know, and I don't know if he invited all of them, everybody in the boat, to step out, but Peter has this moment where he decides, okay, I'm going to do this, you know? And that's what it just felt like. It just felt like an invitation to go on this adventure with him. So anyway, so I go back home, climb down the hill, go back home and talk to Linda. And I'm like, hon, you're not going to believe this. Like, I need you to talk some sense into me. I feel like we should maybe start giving 31% of our income. That's what it was at the time. 31. I was age 31, so 31%. We'd been giving 11% and nearly tripling our giving instantly. And I'm like, I don't even know if we can do this, hon, but I just had this crazy idea. I don't know if it's God or if I'm just making it up type of thing. And she's like, you know what? If God's asking us to do that, I'll bet he has something really cool on the other side of it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So anyway, so with that, like we started that month giving 31% of our income. And so I went back and did all the math again. It's like now, because we're pretty much giving all of our money away, you know, so I always say that like, if you went to a secular financial advisor and asked them how to pay off your mortgage early, like he would say, this is the worst idea. The
100%.
worst idea is to give all your money away. And so we're giving all of our money away. So I'm like, all right, so now our payoff plan now becomes a 10-year payoff plan. And I'm like, okay, all right, well, I'll lay it down, Lord, I'll give it to you, you know. And the amazing thing, Chris, like I can't tell you specifics, but all I know is 10 months later, our mortgage was paid in full. Like it makes absolutely no sense. We literally did the opposite of what anyone would advise to do, but God moved. And it's like, yeah, our business just began thriving. It was like loaves and fishes stuff. Like money was just there and coming. Like it was just crazy. It was just absolutely crazy.
That's so powerful. I'm super proud of you.
I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say to that. Like, because it's like it was just an act of obedience, you know. But like we benefited, you know.
Sure. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, Bob, I'm proud of you. Your book, Simple Money,
man.
Rich Life, Achieve True Financial Freedom, and Design a Life of Eternal Impact. It's available right now. Go to the show notes at wintoday.tv. And if you're watching us, here it is. So go get a copy today. Bob, anything else you want to leave with the listeners? This has just been a timely conversation. In fact, I'll ask this. If you were to give people some takeaway tips, here we are. Summer 2022, it's been a rough, tumultuous financial year for many. Yep. Leave them with some hope.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think one of the biggest ahas I had in my journey was just realizing that what the world had taught me, everything I thought I knew, just how money was the goal, that's the thing to seek after, that is, like we talked about before, that's where my security is going to, or my significance is going to come from. When we understand that it's not the goal, but it is something, it's a tool that we can use for his glory, for his purposes, you know, to amplify what he's called us to do and to push forward the things he's called us to do. Like when we understand that, it just changes the whole conversation. It changes our thought process with the whole thing. It allows us to better function as a steward, just knowing that everything in our bank accounts is actually for us to manage for him. And from that posture, everything changes. Like it's just one of those things that as you start shifting your mindset, your beliefs about all this, like everything changes in such a good and powerful way. So that would be my encouragement to people. Like, just continue to lean into him in all of this stuff. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's like sometimes we need to be reminded about all this. But to see yourself as a steward, and know that he is going to take care of us in the midst of all this stuff.
That's awesome. Last thing, Bob, tell people where to connect with you and Linda.
Sure. Yeah. So seedtime.com, or we're at Seedtime on Instagram, or the Seedtime Money Podcast. Any of the above. Love to say hi. Send us a DM.
Fantastic. Bob, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, Chris, it was my honor, my pleasure. I appreciate it, man.